What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkand. Daniel, it's Monday of opening day week. We're a few days away. We were hoping to do this live, but the Freeway series at being a night game kind of messed that up. So we're here. We're recording. We will be back live in the coming days, but 3 days away. Are we excited? I know you're still doing some Lakers stuff. How are we feeling?
No, I'm definitely excited. I've been pretty much over spring training for like 2 or 3 weeks now. Feel like it's way too long. So, just seeing the team at Dodger Stadium playing a game last night, that was great. And excited for opening day.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're grateful to be Dodgers fans because regardless of what you think about this roster and how good the Padres are, it could be way worse. We're not following a team that is an absolute dumpster fire. We're not following a team like the Reds, who has that tweet come out that Ken Griffey Jr. is the 4th highest paid player on their roster, which is only slightly more obnoxious than the fact that their 4th highest paid player would be making like $4 million. So regardless of what you think, I think as Dodger fans, we can be excited about the upcoming season because while it might not be the same as last year, it is still going to be an incredibly competent and incredibly competitive, as we'll get into, team this season. So here's the plan for today. I want to start a little bit with Sunday night's game, that Freeway series game against the Angels at Dodger Stadium. A couple storylines that I think are significant that came out of that. Then Daniel and I are going to do our annual segment of bold predictions, and these are bold. Some are more bold than others, but we'll give you 9 bold predictions between the two of us. Then we'll get into some just general predictions about individual players, over-unders, who wins the NL West, that kind of thing. And then we'll get to a few of the questions that came to us via Twitter. So, Daniel, let's start with the Freeway series. The Dodgers played the Angels last night, and the headline of that game heading into the regular season is very, very clear, and it's Clayton Kershaw. He was absolutely dominant last night. 6 innings, 3 hits, no walks, 7 strikeouts, including 3 strikeouts of Mike Trout, all 3 swinging. That's about as good of a first start before the regular season begins as you could possibly hope for.
Yeah. I almost wish he would have saved it for the regular season at that point. But no, he was great. Like you said, struck out Trout 3 times, struck out Ohtani. Was in complete control the whole night, so much so that the game ended in like just over 2 hours.
Love that.
So that's great to see. Obviously, he's not starting on opening day, but he'll be starting the 3rd game of the season against Arizona. So I saw all I needed to see. He's ready to go.
What's interesting to me about Kershaw, and I'm not like enough of an expert on pitching and pitching around the league to really speak authoritatively, I never hear Kershaw's slider mentioned as one of the best pitches in all of baseball. But when you watch a guy who's throwing like 90 to 92 with his fastball and yet gets 7 strikeouts, Trout 3 times. I mean, we know about the curveball. I feel like somehow his slider is actually underrated because when that thing is dialed, the best hitters in the league look like they're swinging at wiffle balls.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think his slider usage has basically gone up every year, so much so that he's now throwing it even more than he throws his fastball. So, yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, it's not that much different from his fastball. Like, it's only like 3 or 4 miles an hour slower. But that's all the difference you need. I feel like hitters are always swinging right over that thing. Like you said, 7 strikeouts in 6 innings. So he's looking good. And I agree. I feel like that slider doesn't get talked about enough.
On the offensive side last night, the Dodgers win 3-0 on a trio of solo home runs. And I think the names here are very interesting. Max Muncy hits a home run. Chris Taylor then goes back-to-back. And then finally, James Outman late in the game gets a home run. As I look at those 3 names, I say, man, what a fascinating group of 3. It wasn't Mookie Betts or Freddie Freeman or Will Smith, kind of the guys that you probably pencil in as being relatively confident about what they're going to give you. It's these 3. Muncy and Taylor, who struggled last season. James Outman, who's a rookie. I believe last night was his first, if you want to call it a professional game, at Dodger Stadium. All of his major league games last year were on the road. And all 3 of these guys homer. When you look at that list, which of those 3 names are you most excited about? Is it Muncy, who we're penciling in to be one of the 3 or 4 best hitters on the team? Is it Chris Taylor, who is absolutely desperate for good news? Or is it James Outman, the rookie, who, man, if he can actually be the real deal at the plate, could be a game changer for the Dodgers?
Yeah, well, let me just say, I think it's encouraging that all of them homered. Like, when you look at the first 2 guys, they are both coming off their worst seasons. So, and those are guys that the Dodgers are counting on to have bounce back years. But But I'm gonna go with James Outman on this one. I feel like he didn't have like that super big prospect pedigree, and we know he had a great year last year.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think in the back of all of our heads is like, when is this guy going to come back down to earth? Like you said, his first game at Dodger Stadium last night, the bright lights obviously weren't too bright for him. He goes deep. So I think just that confirmation that we continue to get with him of like, yeah, this guy is the real deal. It is great to see.
Yeah, I'm with you. That was encouraging to me. I mean, look, if you watch this show, you know how I feel about James Outman, and obviously I'm encouraged the more sort of confirmation we get that, like you said, man, this actually might be a real deal kind of a guy. And I believe it was his only at bat in the game as well, and so that's encouraging. The Chris Taylor one is probably the most interesting to me, and I'll say it this way. I'm confident in Max Muncy. Like, we're going to get to how many home runs we think he's going to hit this year. I feel good about Max Muncy. So seeing him hit a home run into the wind, by the way, where Kershaw, to be fair, did give up a couple balls that looked like home runs off the bat that kind of died in the gaps. Muncy powers it through. Chris Taylor gets one over the bullpen wall. But Taylor is interesting to me. On one hand, thank goodness, he makes contact. He makes hard contact. I can't remember what the exit velocity was on that one, but it was struck pretty good. It was 110.7 miles an hour. So it was the hardest hit ball of the game. And I believe they said on the broadcast, it was a harder hit ball than any he had at any point last season. Now, the caveat I will say is they listed that home run at 409 feet. And that ball looked like it went about 1.5 feet over the wall at about 360. So is it possible that the savant numbers were a little skewed on that one? Maybe, but he hit the ball straight through the wind. So all that said, I'm still not sure it's enough for me to be like, take a deep breath and say, oh man, Chris Taylor, nothing to worry about here.
Yeah, I'm with you, just because like we know Chris Taylor has that really long swing. He swings as hard as he can basically every pitch. So once in a while, he's going to connect and hit one a long way. And that's what happened. I think we need to see him more consistently cutting down on the strikeouts, shortening up his swing a little with 2 strikes, going for the base hits when the situation, like when there's guys on base, and that's what you need. So, it's still been a really, really rough spring for Chris Taylor. I'm not totally out on him, but I don't think one swing is going to completely change my mind just yet.
Yeah. The other thing of note, just from last night, looking at the bullpen, the way the Dodgers relievers pitched, I thought was somewhat encouraging. Almonte, Gratterall, Bickford, Miller combined for 3 innings, 1 hit, 2 walks, 3 strikeouts, no earned runs. Almonte is a guy that I think we're penciling into the back of the bullpen. Gratterall, a guy we'll get to who's sort of in that in-between of, is he a back-end reliever? Is he a middle reliever? But Bickford gets 1 out, Shelby Miller, a pair of strikeouts. And so we're going to get into the Dodgers bullpen. That's one of my bold predictions, but encouraging for Kershaw to be able to give you 6 shutout, and then for those guys to come in and look pretty good. Obviously, guys are, rotating in and out at the end of these games, but encouraging from the Dodgers bullpen as well. So let's get into some of these bold predictions. I've got 5, you've got 4. We're going to rattle these off back and forth. I'll give mine first, and then you can react if you want. And look, the first one is not going to be what a lot of Dodgers fans want to hear, Daniel. I ordered these in a particular way, and this was the negative one that started off first. So my first 2 are negative. My final 3 are all positives. But my bold prediction, and you can tell me how bold this is, I don't think Shohei Ohtani is a Dodger at any point in 2023. I know Dodgers fans are kind of penciling in seeing this guy in Dodger blue. If it does happen, Daniel, I think it's going to be in free agency after the season. I just don't see the Dodgers swinging a trade, in part because I think the Angels are going to be competitive enough to where they're not going to want to trade him. And secondly, I think the cost they're going to ask for is going to be through the roof. So my first somewhat bold prediction, and trust me, these are going to get scalding hot by the end of this segment, is that Ohtani will not be a Dodger.
Yeah, I mean, I think the last part, what you just kind of said, is what it comes down to. Like, the Angels have to want to trade this guy for the Dodgers can offer whatever they want, but if the Angels don't want to trade him, it's not going to happen. And if the Angels are a competitive team, like a lot of people expect them to be, then obviously they're not going to trade the best player in the world. So I could see that. I could also very well see things going south. So it'll just be something we have to monitor. But I'm not going to get my hopes up. At least, anytime soon.
Okay, give us a positive one, Daniel. Your first bold prediction is what?
My first one, I think Dustin May is going to be an all-star this year. I think he's looked really good this spring. I think the strikeout numbers are up, which was kind of the knock on him when he was first coming up. Like, we all know he's got great stuff. He throws 100. But he hadn't had the strikeout numbers yet. He started kind of missing a lot more bats right before the injury. He gave us a glimpse of it for like 1 month. He looked phenomenal. And last year, I'm just gonna kind of throw it all away. Like, he comes back in the last month of the season after a long Tommy John recovery. I'm not gonna put too much stock into anything he did last year, but I think he looks really good this spring. I think he's healthy, and I think he's still got some of the best stuff in the entire league. So I think if he could stay healthy, he's going to have an all-star season.
Well, one of our predictions later is going to be how many starts we think Dustin May is going to make, which, to be fair, to be an all-star, you just got to be able to stay healthy in the first half. I'm curious, how many Dodgers starters do you have making the all-star team? Because one of the things that is a challenge for a guy like Dustin May is, well, if Julio Urias is pitching well, if Clayton Kershaw is pitching well, then he might fall into kind of, well, you're the third guy and the other two are already there. So I'm curious, do you have Urias or Kershaw as all-stars?
I'd say I'll go Julio as an all-star. Kershaw, health-wise, I just don't know. It's also the game's not at Dodger Stadium, so I don't know if he's going to get that extra bump like he did last year. So I'll go Julio and May.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think one of Julio or Kershaw is going to be an all-star. And I'm with you. I mean, I'm a believer in Dustin May. I feel like I'm constantly having to remind people this guy used to be one of the top prospects in all of baseball, a guy who was penciled in as a future, number 2 starter, potentially number 1. And so if he can stay healthy, he's going to pass the eye test. The numbers he has proven at the major league level can be where they need to be. It's just a matter of, can he put it all together and can he be healthy? So Dustin May, an all-star, that's your first bold prediction. I got one more negative prediction, and if you watched our last show talking about James Outman making the opening day roster, this one won't come as a surprise. I'm not predicting this by opening day, but my second bold prediction is I think Trayce Thompson gets designated for assignment at some point this year. I think the small sample size success of last year was great. It was encouraging. I have been completely disappointed in his performance thus far this spring, which, again, I keep saying it. I understand it's spring training, but unless you have proven throughout your career that I shouldn't care about what you do in spring training, I'm going to care about what you do in spring training. I just think the Dodgers have too many outfielders. At some point, they're going to have to make a decision there, and I see Trayce Thompson being the odd man out. If the Dodgers feel like they need to add an infielder, or if there's a prospect that needs to be called up, whether it's Michael Busch or maybe an infielder of some sort, Yanni Hernandez, I think Trayce Thompson could be the guy who, from a platoon perspective and whatever, could be the odd man out.
I mean, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I'm also pretty low on Trayce. I also just think when you look around the outfield, like with James Outman making the opening day roster, you're kind of wondering, like, what is Trayce's role going to be? Like last year, he had reverse splits. Like, he hit righties really well, and he couldn't hit lefties worth a lick. Well, if you look at the Dodgers outfield, they look pretty good against righties. Like, they have James Outman in center, David Peralta in left, and they also have Jason Hayward as another lefty bat off the bench. So what they really need is someone that can hit lefties. And Trayce, I mean, from what we've seen from Trayce, he's not that guy. We'll see. Those things could change. I think if you look at his overall career numbers, he was better against lefties than he was last year. But I pretty much look at Trayce as just a bench bat at this point, and who knows if he might surprise us. We'll see. But yeah, I'm not super high on him either.
One name I'll throw out, and look, you could play this game all day. The Mets designated Darren Ruff for assignment. He's 36. He's a defensive liability. Okay, all the caveats. The one thing that the guy does is he crushes left-handed pitching historically. It was a down year last year, but he's just a name that I saw that name come across on Twitter, and I was like, you know what? Like, if the Dodgers had to choose between those two guys, I think they would take Trayce right now, but could you get Ruff on a minor league deal, get him into the organization, and then say, hey, give our guys a month, and if we don't have anybody that can hit left-handed pitching, he could very easily be a guy who slides into left field against lefties. You got Chris Taylor who can play center field, or James Outman if you're going to let him play every day, and just something to monitor. I don't know if there are any other names out there. Obviously, it could be a guy from the minor leagues, but Darren Ruff was just an interesting name. So tossing that one out there, do what you will with it. So that's my second bold prediction, Trayce Thompson, DFA watch. They're all going to be positive from me from here on out. I promise you that.
Other than the half that were negative, they're all going to be positive.
No, 3 out of 5. Come on, 60% positive.
Okay.
Okay, go for it. Your next one, moving over to the bullpen.
Well, my next one, I don't think you're going to agree with this, but I got Brusdar Graterol. I think he's going to have a really good year. I think he's going to put it together and end up being a back-end type arm for the Dodgers. I'm not necessarily going to say he's going to be the full-time closer. I don't think the Dodgers want anyone to be the full-time closer, but I think he's going to have his best year. Similar to Dustin May, we all know he's got the great stuff. It's just a matter of can he miss enough bats, especially now, with the shift being banned. Like, he's a ground ball guy. That will probably hurt him a little bit. But I just think the way relievers are, like, they're so volatile that I just think eventually he's going to have that really great season where he's throwing 102, 103, finally missing some bats, striking guys out. And I think that's going to come this year. So, I like I said, I don't think he's going to be the closer by any means, but I think he's just going to be one of 4 or 5 guys that they could basically trust in any spot, pretty much.
I'll say this about Graterol. There's no debating this stuff. It's just a matter of looking at the Ks per 9 and saying, okay, that number's got to get above 9. I mean, we were at 7.8 last season, 7.3 the year before that, 5 the year before that. He's got to be striking out at least one batter. What's that?
He's trending up.
There you go. Yeah, 7.3 to 7.8. I will say his walks cut in half last year. It was 3.5 in 2021, which was a career high. 1.8 last year. That was kind of right in line with more of his career average. So if he can keep the walks under 2 and the strikeouts above 9, excuse me, I agree with you. Here's the number that's encouraging on Graterol. Expected ERA last year, 2.47. His FIP was 2.95. So the metrics underneath, as far as quality of contact and whiffs and that kind of thing, they're actually pretty positive for him. So I probably agree with this more than you would expect. Do I think, give me your ranking. Like, do you have Evan by the end of the season, Phillips, Vesia, and Almonte? Is Graterol better than any of the 3 of them?
I'll say Evan Phillips is number 1, and I'll put Graterol number 2.
And are you including like the Daniel Hudsons of the world in that ranking, or Blake Trinan if he comes back healthy? You've got Graterol.
Well, are we saying who has the best overall year, or who do you trust most, like, going into the postseason?
Yeah, like, I guess when the Dodgers get fully healthy, who do you envision yourself trusting most kind of towards the end of the year? If Hudson is healthy, if Trinan is able to come back, those types of things.
I'll put Hudson ahead of Graterol as well. Okay. At this point with Trinan, I'm not expecting a whole lot. Like, they're saying he might come back for the last month of the season. I don't know how much you could really trust a guy like that in high leverage situations. So I'll go Phillips, Hudson, Graterol.
Okay. And just to be clear, where does Jimmy Nelson rank? Your guy Jimmy Nelson rank on that list?
Unfortunately, pretty low. I hate to say it. I love Jimmy Nelson, but it has not been a kind spring to him so far. No. But hey, he's coming off a major injury. They're gonna put him on the IL, let him get right, and who knows? Maybe by the All-Star break, we'll see him.
I love that. Daniel has not lost confidence in his guy, Jimmy Nelson, who I was calling to retire about a week and a half ago. So I'm going to piggyback off the Graterol one. My bold prediction, which I don't think this is a bold prediction, but based on the way that I interact with fans, I think most people are going to feel. I think the Dodgers finish with a top 3 bullpen in all of Major League Baseball. I know the injuries. I know the question marks, whatever you want to say. The Dodgers bullpen is incredible every single year. Last year, they finished second in ERA, 2.87, second behind the Houston Astros. I look at the bullpen. I like Evan Phillips. I like Alex Vesia. I like Yency Almonte. I'm with you. Okay, Graterol trending up. Daniel Hudson when he gets healthy. I mean, you just go down the list, and we're not even talking about, like, does Trinan come back healthy? Is JP Fireeisen a part of this bullpen at some point before the end of the year? Alex Reyes. There's dudes in that bullpen that the Dodgers could try and tap into, not to mention who's the next Evan Phillips, who's the next guy that they claim off of waivers, or who's sitting in the minors that they completely turn around. And so to me, this doesn't feel like a bold prediction. We're sort of trending up in bold predictions. My next 2, I think, will be more scalding hot for the people out there. But I think the Dodgers bullpen is one of the 3 best in baseball.
Yeah, and you kind of just alluded to it, but I feel like their depth is the best it's ever been in the bullpen. Like, they're going 8-9 deep to start, and there's reinforcements on the way. And like you said, there's even guys who we've probably never heard of at this moment in time that by the All-Star break will have like a 1.5 ERA or something. So I'm bullish on the Dodgers bullpen as well. It's pretty much the first time that they don't have a set closer, which I actually like. I don't think that's necessary in today's game anymore. And I just think they got a lot of high quality arms that they're basically all bullpens are so volatile, like I've said so many times, that you can never really predict what a guy's going to do. So all you can really do is stack up as many good arms as possible and hope a few of them hit at least.
They finished second in ERA in 2020, 2021, and 2022. So again, is it a hot take to say they're going to do it for the fourth year in a row? I don't think so. But I think a lot of people would look at the bullpen and say, really, Phil Bickford made it? Like, we're going to be counting on a bullpen that has Phil Bickford and Andre Jackson in it to be a top three. And I say, yes. So that's my bold prediction number 3. Give me your third bold prediction, Daniel.
Let's see. My third one. All right, I got this is kind of a negative one, I guess, but I think Gavin Stone and Ryan Pepiot are both going to have better years than Noah Syndergaard. I know the Dodgers gave Noah Syndergaard that contract, and that usually means we should just trust them, like they know what they're doing. But I haven't been too encouraged by Syndergaard. This spring he comes out in the first week saying he's planning on throwing 100 again. I think 93 or maybe 94 is the hardest pitch we've seen him throw all spring. I know he's gotten outs, but long term, I just don't necessarily trust him with his velocity that low. And part of it is I'm just really high on both Gavin Stone and Ryan Pepiot. I think both of those guys have looked great this spring. I think Pepiot has kind of refound his changeup, and his command has been a lot better than it was last year, which it was hard to get worse than it was last year, to be fair. But I just think, Pepiot's starting the year in the rotation, and Gavin Stone is probably not far behind. I think they're going to send him down for probably a month or so, get his bearings, and then he'll be, the first or second guy called up. So I think both of those guys, I think, are going to have really good years. And Syndergaard, we'll see. We actually are going to talk about him a little more later, so I won't say too much, but I'm just not super high on him.
Yeah, I will save my thoughts on Syndergaard later. Pepiot and Stone, I think, I think generally we're kind of on the same page. I would say if I were to agree with this, it's more because I'm high on Stone and Pepiot than I am super, super down on Syndergaard. But Syndergaard was almost one of my bold predictions. And then the more I dug in, I was like, I don't know. I didn't feel great about it. So I'll leave that one alone for there. But you say Stone and Pepiot both have better years than Syndergaard. And I will follow this one up with my bold prediction. I think Miguel Vargas finishes third among Dodgers in Rookie of the Year voting this season. So I know people love
negative.
No, we're positive. It's positive. It's positive. It's because I believe in the rookies that they have. I actually think, depending on how things shake out, so I've got Outman finishing ahead of him, and I've got Gavin Stone finishing ahead of him. I think both of those guys come up and make a bigger impact than Miguel Vargas. Depending on what you think about Ryan Pepiot, Pepiot's rookie status is still intact for this upcoming season as well. I think he's a guy who could be in the mix. And it's not that I'm anti-Miguel Vargas. I just think the other guys I'm higher on right now. And I know that doesn't line up with prospect pedigree and kind of what the experts are saying. And so obviously Vargas had a weird spring because of the injury and whatnot. I think Vargas is going to be fine. I don't know if he's going to be awesome right off the bat. I think he's going to be fine. I'm not worried about the defense. This is more a positive of, I think really highly of James Outman, and I think really highly of Gavin Stone. So I've got him finishing third in that group. And again, if you like Pepiot, I actually think there's a case to be made that if Pepiot were to get 20 starts, he could be in the mix for Rookie of the Year. At least, I'm not saying any of these guys are going to win it, but if we're talking about final voting at the end of the year. So there you go. Your reaction.
I can't say I agree, just because Vargas is the only one that we know for sure is going to get everyday at bats pretty much. And obviously that could change, but I don't know. I've just been really impressed with Vargas. But you mentioned the defense. I think that's kind of what's impressed me the most, just because no one had a clue coming into this year if he could play second base, and he's actually looked really competent there. He's a good athlete, and I just think his bat to ball skills are really good, and I think that's going to translate well to the next level. Like a guy like James Outman has a really high ceiling. He might have a monster year, but he also could be back in AAA at the end of the month. And I just think Vargas his bat is more major league ready. I think he's not necessarily an all or nothing type of guy. So, but this will be interesting. I think the Dodgers have a really good crop of rookies this year, and I like that they're gonna pretty much give them all opportunities, from day one outside of Gavin Stone. That is.
Yep, absolutely. All right, you've got one more. Your fourth bold prediction, and then I'll wrap it up. Your fourth one is I think these last two, I would say, Daniel, are going to be the most scalding hot. So if you've been borderline offended by anything we have said yet, like, let me introduce you to the last two bold predictions on this show. So I'll let you go first. I'll piggyback.
This is not going to make any of our Padre fan listeners happy, but I got the Dodgers winning the division by more than 8 games. He agrees with me apparently, but I right before we started recording this, I read an article, but it was written by I believe it was like an ESPN San Diego writer, and the title was "How the Padres Made Up 30 Games on the Dodgers Without Taking the Field." And to me, that's just not how it works. Like, I know the Padres had a solid offseason. Obviously, they add Xander Bogaerts. He's a great player. Tatis is coming back eventually. And when you look at the Dodgers offseason, not too many people are high on what they did. They obviously had some key losses and didn't really spend big money to replace them. But I just think the organizational infrastructure is just completely different between the two sides. Like, yes, the Padres have 3 or 4 stars in their lineup. They got some good high-end, starting pitchers. But after that, it kind of falls off. I don't think they have anywhere close to the depth that the Dodgers have. I don't think the Dodgers, as of right now, between now and the deadline, the Dodgers could go out and get anyone they want. I don't think the Padres could say the same. So I just think over the course of a 162-game season, I still see a gap between these two teams. We'll see how it plays out. I could obviously be totally wrong here, but I just don't think you make up a 30-game difference that easily, especially without seeing it, come together on the field.
So I don't necessarily agree with the 8+, but are you ready for this one, Daniel? This is a positive one.
I thought you were going to have the Dodgers in third place.
No,
so.
We're not zagging there. Dave Roberts wins Manager of the Year in 2023 is my bold prediction. Because if the Dodgers were to win the division by 8+ games, and not because the Padres are completely combustible, but because the Dodgers are really good despite losing Trey Turner, despite losing the pieces they have and having to fit rookies in, I think we could be due for another Dave Roberts Manager of the Year. And I know this one is going to piss off a bunch of people, and I apologize. I'm not trying to piss you off. I just do the math. I'm high on the Dodgers. You're high on the Dodgers. If the Dodgers perform as well as you and I think they are, I think the narrative is going to be created that, wow, look at the job that Dave Roberts is doing with Miguel Vargas starting at second, with James Outman starting in center, with Ryan Pepiot and Gavin Stone as his 4th and 5th starters. I think the narrative is going to build that, holy smokes, like, this is a team that many people expected to regress a little. Vegas does not, but fans and I think media people are the darling Padres. But if this ends up being a race all the way to the end and the Dodgers end up edging out the Padres, and those two teams are 2 of the 4 or 5 best teams in baseball, I think Dave Roberts is going to be in the thick of the Manager of the Year competition. So my bold prediction, my final one, is Dave Roberts wins Manager of the Year.
Okay. I feel like the last couple of years he was kind of like ineligible for that award just because the Dodgers rosters were so stacked, but that's not the case this year. So I definitely think if they have a good season, if they win a division, if they come close to 100 wins, then I think he'll be firmly in the mix for that. But let's just be clear here. So if anyone has any Dave Roberts criticism, they should direct them to your DMs because you are his defender now. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, one of us is predicting Dave Roberts' team to beat the Padres by 8 or more games. So, I mean, I guess you could go either way with that one. Dave Roberts, he's actually only won Manager of the Year one time, which is sort of surprising to me. It was 2016. He's due. He's due 7 or 8 years ago. So interpret this how you will, but I've got Dave Roberts winning Manager of the Year. You've got the Dodgers winning the division by 8+ games. I think what's going to be happen, Daniel, is I think we both know a couple people who are going to be sending text messages to both of us when they watch the show, and they're not as high on the Dodgers as you and I are, and there's definitely going to be some Dave Roberts thoughts aimed my way, but I'll take it. Bring it on. These are bold predictions, okay? Like last year, I was predicting that Bobby Miller was going to make a postseason start. So you want to talk about how wrong you could be on a bold prediction? There you go. Not all of them are terrible, but some of them are more bold than others. So let's move on there. Let's get to just some players, individual statistics. We've talked about some of these guys, some guys we haven't, but let's start with Noah Syndergaard. Over or under 3.94 ERA? I think 3.94, by the way, is his ERA from last season. Do you think he is better or worse than he was last year? It sounds like I already know the answer to this.
Yeah. I kind of pretty much laid this out. I'll go over here.
This one of mine bold predictions when I first was like just jotting down ideas was that Syndergaard is an absolute failure. Like this signing that we expect to be the new Tyler Anderson and all these guys that they just fix and everybody get better is like, man, is Syndergaard going to be the guy who breaks that trend? They signed him to a good chunk of change as far as dollar amount. We know the name brand. Again, 3.94. If he has a 3.94, nobody's going to be complaining. That's going to be perfectly acceptable for a guy that we're pretty much penciling in as like the number 4 or 5 starter. I'd have him behind Gonsolin and May. So I'd have him as my 5th starter. If a guy like Pepiot's in the rotation, then maybe you mix it up. The velocity is terrifying for me. We've talked about this. I believe he averaged 94.5 miles an hour on his fastball last season. He's been touching like 94, 95, but by the third inning, he's sitting like 90 to 92. We're talking Clayton Kershaw fastball numbers. And yet, spring training stats are spring training stats. 11 strikeouts, just 1 walk. The walks and hits per inning pitched has been low. He got shelled in his last start. But outside of that, that was the piece where I was like, he still is missing bats. And with the Dodgers, here's kind of why I'm not pessimistic or optimistic. I'm undecided. Is because the Dodgers have basically said, we don't care about your velocity. Like, that's been consistent from the Dodgers. Syndergaard, I'm going to touch 100. And Dave Roberts is like, look, we actually don't really care about his velocity, which tells me that they're way more concerned about his secondary pitches where they find value. They maybe see a very, 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 very bootleg version of Clayton Kershaw, where even if you can get to 94 on the fastball as you build up, but hey, we believe in the secondary stuff. We believe in the breaking ball. We believe in off-speed stuff, that maybe that's where they actually think his value lies. And so if he's not throwing 95, 96, then maybe he relies on the fastball less. And maybe they actually think there's a better pitcher in there on that regard. So again, I'm torn on this one. I'm going to go over. I think it's going to start with a 4, but I can't fully commit to the Syndergaard is going to be a failure because it doesn't seem like the Dodgers put as much emphasis on his velocity as others. Now, Daniel, do you think they're just saying that out loud because the velocity is that bad? Or do you think they genuinely believe that his role as a pitcher, the way he needs to pitch, has changed and needs to evolve?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. Like, I think if you ask Dave Roberts in confidence, like behind closed doors, I think he'd say he'd rather Noah Syndergaard be throwing in the upper 90s. But at the same time, that's not the end all be all for being a successful pitcher. So I think at this point, you just kind of have to work with what you got. Like, if he's not throwing high velocity, then he better be hitting his spots. And like you said, the walk numbers are really good. Like he's missing some bats, so that's encouraging at least. But I definitely think they'd rather him throw harder.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, second one. I think this might be the easiest one. I think this number is too low. James Outman over or under a weighted runs created plus of 100. For those unfamiliar with this stat, it basically takes your offensive profile and compares it to league average. 100 is league average. So the question that I'm asking is, do you believe that this season James Outman will be an above average or a below average offensive player? Because, and I'll frame this with, a lot of people are listening like, are you kidding me? Have you seen this guy hit? The concern with Outman has not been his defense. Many people think his defense is going to keep him in the major leagues. The question has been, can he hit at a high level? Will he strike out too much? Will the power translate? Will he be able to hit for a high enough average? And so do you believe, Daniel, he's above average or below average as a hitter this season?
I think I probably speak for both of us here. I'm going over here. I'm buying the James Outman hype. I'm glad that he made the opening day roster, and inferring just from the fact that he made the roster means he's probably going to be playing a lot. And I think he's going to benefit from that. And I think he's going to be really good.
I think the strikeout numbers are going to be there. Like, he's not going to become a guy that isn't striking out 30% of the time, but I just think he's going to hit enough. I think he's going to end up with 20 to 25 home runs, depending on the number of at-bats. And as long as the batting average can live in the 240 range, then that's going to be more than enough. I think he's going to be well over this number. I think he probably ends up closer to 110 than he ends up to 100, I guess is where I would put him. I don't think he's going to be like an offensive superstar that you put in the middle of the lineup for years to come, but I think he's going to be an above average rookie offensive player combined with really good defense. So I've got that. The second one, maybe a little bit harder to answer. Chris Taylor, above average or below average offensive player in 2023?
I'm going to go slightly under, but I still think he's going to be like in the 90s, which all things considered, I think you take that. Like, if you have a utility player who's slightly below average with the bat, probably a little overpaid with the contract they gave him, but I think Considering the year he had last year, considering how he's looked this spring, like I'd take a 95 WRC plus out of Chris Taylor with him being able to play as many positions as he can.
Yeah.
The strikeouts are very concerning. I'm not going to lie about that. So that's kind of what's keeping me from going over here. But I do think he's gonna hit his 12 to 15 home runs like he does every year. He's gonna come up with some big hits at certain times. He's shown a knack for being clutch. But I just think overall, striking out as much as he does, it's hard for me to go over here.
Yeah, looking at his numbers. So since coming over to the Dodgers starting in 17, that was his first full year. 126 weighted runs created plus, 113, 106, 129, 113. So a well above average offensive player. Last season, do you know what his WRC plus was? This number was surprising to me.
Was it like in the 60s or something?
It was actually 93.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that number when I saw it. It felt way worse. I mean, he hit 220, 304 on base, 373 slug, just 10 home runs. So I'm not entirely sure how you get to 93 with that. It wasn't Cody Bellinger level bad, although it felt that way. The strikeout rate was concerning. He had been hovering in the mid to high 20s. That was at over 35% last year. The walk rate, which was 12 and then 11, was down to 10 last year. So everything going in the wrong direction. All that to say, I'm with you. I'm taking the under. I have serious concerns about the swing and miss. Even last night in the Freeway series, as I'm watching the game, there were just some really bizarre swings. They talked a lot about timing. I mean, there were some pitches that like he was either way early on where he's pulling a ball like almost into the Dodgers dugout. And then 2 pitches later, he is so late on a fastball that it's like the bat is not even crossing the zone yet while he's making contact. And so he got a hold of one. The contact was loud. It was the loudest contact he's had in 12 months, but I am skeptical of Chris Taylor. Again, 93 last year. So is he really going to be a whole lot worse than that? I mean, who knows? We'll see. Moving to another guy who struggled last season and yet is maybe due for some positive regression. Max Muncy, over or under 31 and a half home runs this season. In his last 3 full seasons, so not counting 2020, 35, 35, and 36 before last year when he dipped off a little bit. Do you think he gets back into that territory and has 32 or more this year?
This is another one that I'm going to go slightly under. I am buying the Max Muncy bounce back as a whole. But I think he's going to hit, 28, 30 home runs. 31 and a half feels a little high, but hey, if he stays healthy, he's shown that even he's going to hit his home runs. Like even if his average isn't high, the 2 things he's going to do is he's going to hit home runs and he's going to walk, but I'll just go slightly under here.
Yeah, 32 is a big number. You've got to project a whole lot of health into this in order to get over that. So I'm with you. I think slightly under. I think he gets to 30, but I think he sits right there. He had 21 home runs in 136 games, nearly 600 at bats last year. So it's not like a small sample size, but I'm with you. I think he's going to be much better. I think maybe having some consistency defensively will help him, but this is one of the things that, like, if you're a betting person and you go look at season-long props and you look at a number like this, and I don't know what his line actually is. I didn't look it up, but the over-unders, the unders are always not fun to bet, but you basically get a baked in. If this player were to get injured, you win your bet on the under. And so the overs are always very challenging on these. But we're both going slightly under, but I think I say 30. It sounds like your upper 20s, maybe getting to 30, 31, somewhere in there as well. A couple more here. One more player prediction, and this is a guy that we've mentioned, Dustin May. Over under 19 and a half starts. Does he get to 20? Let me read you his career. Going back to 2017, he made 25 appearances in 2017, 23 appearances in 2018. This is minor leagues and major leagues combined, by the way. 2019, he made 24 starts and 10 relief appearances. But here's his last 3 years. 12 appearances in 2020. That's 10 starts and 2 relief appearances. Just 5 appearances in 21, 12 appearances in 22. Do you think he gets over 20 starts this season?
I think he does. I mean, first of all, he's starting the year healthy, so that's always good. I do think they will limit his innings, like it's his first full season coming off the Tommy John. So you don't want that guy throwing 200 innings, but if he could throw 150 innings and like 22, 20, 23 starts, I think you'll take that. And obviously it's impossible to predict injuries.
Yeah.
But hey, I think he's young. I think he's had the Tommy John already. He's healthy right now. So I think he'll stay healthy for a majority, if not the full year.
And he said, by the way, he feels better than he did pre-Tommy John surgery, that he's feeling as good as he can. I'm with you. I'm going to take the over here. I remember getting into an argument with somebody about, like, do Gonsolin and May give you 50 combined starts? And I was like on the under of that. Gonsolin, it's a freak injury, so I'm not crediting this to being injury prone, but Gonsolin already missing starts. I think one of those, like, expecting a full season from both of those guys feels like a fool's errand. Even if Gonsolin, we're talking about just missing 2 or 3 weeks at the beginning of the year, like, if you're going to tell me that neither of those guys get injured after that, I would sell that. But I think May, again, I think I would take the slight over here. I'm not sure he makes 30 starts, but if you told me it was 22, 23, that feels about right for me. Let's talk awards, and then we'll talk division, and then we'll get to a couple of the listener suggested questions. Who do you have finishing highest in the Cy Young among Dodger pitchers? Last year, Julio Urias finished third in National League Cy Young voting.
I'm gonna go Julio again. I just think he's the best bet to stay healthy, and to be a top Cy Young finisher, you basically have to pitch the whole year. So I just think if you look at the rest of that rotation, we just talked about May and Gonsolin. We talked about Syndergaard. Clayton Kershaw, I don't think anyone is betting on him to make 30 starts this year, as much as we love him. And we don't need 30 starts out of him. Like, I don't want Clayton Kershaw throwing 200 innings. So I just think Julio's the best bet to stay healthy all year. And we know he's been extremely effective, and it's obviously a contract year for him. So he has a little extra motivation there. So I think I'm not saying he's going to win the Cy Young, but I think he'll be in the mix again, just like he was last year.
Yeah, I agree. It's the safest bet. I don't think he's going to win. Voters will always have questions about some of the underlying metrics, the strikeout numbers that Julio just doesn't have compared to the elite guys. But the ERA has always been really good. Some of the other statistics, I know wins, nobody really cares about it, but he's probably going to win some games, which, like, it doesn't hurt you in Cy Young voting. I'm not saying you should care about it at all, but if a guy puts an 18 or a 19 in the win column, like, it's going to influence somebody. Kershaw had a better season last year, start for start. He just didn't make as many. That would be the concern, and I'm with you. After those two, it's kind of a drop-off. I wasn't sure if you were going to zag there and say Dustin May. I mean, if he's an all-star, and if Dustin May is able to make 26, 27, 28 starts, I mean, I think he could potentially have some of those wow numbers underneath the surface that maybe a guy like Julio couldn't get to. So, I mean, Dustin May finishing second among Dodger pitchers in Cy Young voting. Daniel, are you ready to go there?
I think Dustin May is going to be extremely effective. I just think they're going to limit his innings at some point. Like, it might come right after the All-Star break, give him like a few weeks off, because they don't want him throwing 200 innings. And like I already said, you pretty much have to pitch the whole season to be in the mix for the Cy Young. But if we're only comparing Dodgers pitchers here, yeah, I'd probably put May second behind Julio.
All right. Moving over to the offensive side, potentially the offensive side. The Dodgers' highest finisher in MVP voting will be who? Freddie Freeman finished fourth last year. Mookie Betts finished fifth. Julio Urias finished 14th in National League's MVP voting last season. So Mookie, Freddie, kind of the favorites. I guess Will Smith, maybe Max Muncy on the outside looking in. Who do you got?
You're not going James Outman here?
I don't know. I'm asking you first, Daniel.
Okay. Well, I'm going to go Freddie Freeman. I think he's just one of the best players there is. I think he's extremely consistent. He plays every day. You could pencil his name into the lineup in the number 2 or number 3 spot every day, and you know he's going to produce. So I'll go Freddie Freeman here. Obviously, Mookie is a great option as well.
Yeah, this is going to be a boring show because we agree on so much of this. I mean, the thing about Freddie Freeman, again, he plays first base. Like, the risk of injury for Freddie Freeman is so much smaller than it is for Mookie Betts. And so you can pretty much guarantee that Freddie Freeman's going to give you at least 140 games, maybe 150, 155, 162 if you let him choose. And so he's the safest bet. He obviously has looked very good. He missed like half of spring with the World Baseball Classic and still led the team in like home runs and RBIs and that kind of thing. He's going to be right in the middle of the lineup. He's going to get all the counting stats. He's going to be consistent. So I've got Freddie Freeman there as well. Although this is not an anti-Mookie Betts segment. Mookie Betts, I think, will be right there. I think both of those guys are top 10 finishers in the MVP race. You already answered this one. The winner of the NL West is, you said Dodgers by 8+. You got Padres in second there, Daniel?
Yeah, Padres in second. I know the Giants made a couple moves. Arizona's got some young guys, but I don't think either of them are ready to compete with the Dodgers and Padres. Yeah.
I think the win total I threw out on a previous show was 94.5. Are you taking the over on that?
I'll go over. I'll put them around 97, 98 wins, and I know that's a lot, but I just trust this organization as a whole to get it right.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got to be that high if you think they're going to win by 8+ games.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got them over 95, 96. I think the Dodgers win the division. I've got it by like 2 games. I think it's a race all the way to the end, but I've got the Dodgers winning the NL West. Next question. The winner of the National League pennant is who? I'll give you some odds here. Braves and Dodgers tied as the favorites at plus 380. Padres and Mets plus 500. Phillies plus 750. Those are your top 5. So do the Dodgers, you think, if you had to place a bet on who was going to win the National League, are you betting on the Dodgers?
This is just so impossible to predict just because who's going to be healthy down the stretch, who's going to be playing well at the right time. We know how much of a crapshoot the playoffs are. I think out of you just named like 5 teams that I think everyone will agree are the teams that are going to be in the mix. I'd say out of those teams, I'm not high on the Phillies. I'm not high on the Mets. So that kind of puts it down to the Dodgers, Braves, and Padres. I'll just say the Dodgers just because we're a Dodgers show, but I don't have a whole lot of confidence there just because of how big of a crapshoot the playoffs is.
Totally. I like the Dodgers here actually as well, because I think some of the questions that I have, obviously the Dodgers have the resources to go out and answer those questions throughout the season. So right now I would say starting pitching, on one hand, there's depth. There's also a lot of question marks. What does Syndergaard give you? Can Dustin May stay healthy? Can Tony Gonsolin stay healthy? Are Pepiot or Grove or Stone or Miller ready? Those are all questions. You might get a lot of yeses, in which case you're going to feel great about the rotation. And yet, if the Dodgers do need to go out and get a pitcher, I think they can. So that's why I feel good about that. Shortstop, another position we can talk about. Miguel Vargas, James Outman, did they perform? There's questions, but I think the Dodgers have the resources to go out and solve the problems that may arise. So I do feel as good as you could possibly feel. I'm high on this team and going out and winning the National League pennant. Are you going to go so far, Daniel, as to say that the Dodgers are the World Series winners? The Astros currently the favorites at plus 600. Dodgers and Braves right behind them, and then the Yankees. Those are your top 4. Astros, Dodgers, and Braves, and then Yankees. Who you got?
I'm gonna, just because we do a round table every year on Dodger Blue where we pick our World Series winner, and the last time I got it right was the Cubs in 2016. And a majority of the years since then, I've picked the Dodgers, and they didn't win. They won in 2020, but I did not pick the Dodgers that year. So just for the sake of that, I'm not going to pick the Dodgers. I'll go with the Astros just because I'm wrong every time, and hopefully that'll give them the nice jinx.
I've got the Dodgers over the Astros. Give me the Dodgers winning the World Series. Dave Roberts, manager of the year. I just like the team. I like that there's enough new blood and new energy in there where there's maybe a sense of urgency that hasn't been there. I think they can play the nobody believes in us card because of the departures. And I just think they've got the right sort of mix of players. I think the young guys are ready to produce. And so if they need to, if the Dodgers are in contention, I think they can go make a couple blockbuster moves at the deadline, although I did predict not Ohtani, and see what happens after that. So I've got the Dodgers over the Astros in the World Series. We'll see. Let's close it out with a few questions here from some folks on Twitter. As always, you can send us a message. I'm at Jeff Spiegel, Daniel at D Stark, and you can send at Dodger Blue 1958. Send us your questions. Normally we do live shows here, but because this one was recording, we just took a few from Twitter. The first one, I am bored 44 asked, do you think the Dodgers get off to a fast start or a slow start? He was predicting that the Dodgers struggle a little bit through April and May, and then kind of things click into gear in June. Obviously a lot of young guys, a lot of question marks throughout. Do you think the Dodgers get off to a good start, or do you think the first month or two might be a little sluggish?
Look, I'm pretty sure they played the Diamondbacks like 7 times in like the first 2 weeks of the season. So if you're looking to get off to a fast start, like you can't ask for much more than that. I know the Diamondbacks are probably going to be better this year, but I still don't expect them to be very good. Definitely not better than the Dodgers. So just because of that, I think they'll get off to a fast start. I'm not saying like they're going to be 16-2 or anything, but I could see them going like 10-5 in their first, 2 weeks of the season.
I think the World Baseball Classic, you have guys that are probably going to be more ready for opening day when it comes to Freddie Freeman and Will Smith and Mookie Betts and Austin Barnes and Julio Urias. I think you just go down that list. So I agree. I think the Dodgers are going to be fine. As you said, the schedule sets up favorably for the Dodgers. They do have some young guys that are going to be playing all out. It's not like guys are going to be loafing because they're coming off the World Baseball Classic or they're making major league debuts and sort of fighting for their jobs. And so I think is going to be some urgency. So I'm with you. I don't think the Dodgers are under 500, 30 games into the season and we're panicking there. Ella wants to know, and this is a dangerous one, Daniel. You and I have our fantasy draft on Wednesday.
No.
She was asking for a fantasy outlook, specifically Dodgers rookies, the guys like Pepiot, Outman, Vargas. She mentioned Andre Jackson, who I don't think is going to have much fantasy value, but you kind of hinted that you like Vargas. Sounds like you like Pepiot. So are these guys that towards the end of drafts you might be targeting?
Like you said, this is tricky because we got a draft coming up here. But yeah, I think Vargas is going to be solid in fantasy. I think he's going to hit for, depends what kind of league you're in, if it's categories, if it's points or whatever. But I think he's going to be playing every day, so that's already a plus there. And I think he's gonna get his hits. I think he's gonna drive in his runs. I don't think he's gonna hit a ton of home runs, but I do think there is some power there between 15 and 20 home runs. So I think Vargas is the safest bet, where he's not gonna be a guy that you're necessarily dropping from your roster in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Outman's a little more boom or bust. I feel like he might come out and have a great year. He also might be back in AAA a month from now. We'll see. I think if you're looking long term, if you're potentially in a keeper league, I think Gavin Stone is definitely the guy to go after. He's not going to be there at the start, but I think by the All-Star break, if you draft Gavin Stone or if you pick him up early in the season, I think you'll be really happy about that.
Yeah, I agree with you on Vargas. I think he's the safest bet to just give you everyday production. Outman, we're not totally sure whether or not he's going to be platooned against lefties, and in which case, you're going to have a guy that doesn't play a couple times a week, which could be problematic. But Vargas, I would say, is the safest bet. Pepiot, we both like Pepiot. I don't know if I would believe he's going to develop into a guy that you feel great about in a fantasy league. I mean, we're in a pretty deep league, 12 teams and 26 man rosters. And so there's a lot of guys that get drafted in the 26th round. If you throw a dart at Pepiot, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes undrafted. I wouldn't be surprised either. So Vargas, I think, is where I would go. Outman, if you're a real believer, you can go that route. But as you said, if you can stash a guy for a month and that doesn't kill you, Gavin Stone could be a name to watch if you want to get out in front of that one. Last one, what position do you think the Dodgers target via trade at some point this season? Do you think they end up needing a shortstop? Do they need a starting pitcher? Do they need an outfielder? Where do you think the Dodgers might try and address some things midway through the year?
I think shortstop is the obvious answer here. It's Miguel Rojas's job right now, and we love the defense. Obviously, we saw him make a great diving play last night, but we're just gonna have to see about the offense. He was one of the worst hitters in all of baseball last year.
Yeah,
and that's pretty hard to be when you were in the same league as Cody Bellinger.
He was worse than Bellinger.
Yeah, so I think shortstop is definitely the position to keep an eye on. It's not like they have a top prospect waiting in the wings that plays shortstop that just needs a couple more months of seasoning. That guy does not exist. So if Miguel Rojas does not work, maybe you try Chris Taylor after that, and then after that, you pretty much have no one else. I know you floated around the idea of playing Mookie at shortstop. I'm not expecting that to happen. Sorry to break that. But I think
should have been my bold prediction. Dang it, I missed that one. That could have been another bold prediction. Missed by me.
But I also think there's some guys out there I've heard the name Tim Anderson a lot. If the White Sox season doesn't go well, which I'm not expecting it to go all that well, he could be available at the deadline. Same thing if the Brewers season doesn't go that well. Willy Adames, we've talked about him before. Maybe he becomes available. So I definitely think there could be some options out there, and I think just looking at the roster as a whole, that's without question the most glaring need.
Yeah, because Chris Taylor's your backup option, and that doesn't sound like an awesome option. Look, I'm not saying Mookie Betts is going to play shortstop. I'm just saying if you were trying to put the best 9 guys on the field and you gave Mookie Betts 3 weeks of ground balls at shortstop, I'm not convinced he couldn't be at least average there. And then the outfield, I think you can move if you got Peralta and Outman and Hayward. I don't know. I think we could get to a place where a Hayward over Rojas as an upgrade in the outfield could be a net positive, or if you like Chris Taylor out there, although I guess he'd be playing shortstop in that situation. So just something, I'm going to say starting pitching is where I think the Dodgers go via trade. I hope it's shortstop. I just think that the pickings are pretty slim. I'm not a huge Adames guy as much as other people. Tim Anderson, I would love. I would go out and spend for a guy like that. And who knows, maybe there's a mystery guy or a surprise, a team that's got, maybe a prospect at shortstop coming up that they can afford to trade a solid major league shortstop. We'll see. But I think starting pitching, there's so many question marks that even if those guys pan out, like what's the ceiling for Gavin Stone as a rookie? That one might be high, but what's Pepiot's ceiling or Syndergaard's ceiling? Like, do you think Dustin May or Tony Gonsolin are like number 2 type pitchers, or do the Dodgers need to go out and trade for a real bona fide ace to throw next to Julio and Kershaw come playoff time? So if they make a big trade, I would bet on it being a starting pitcher. That's just me. And who knows, maybe it's Ohtani and it's both. You're getting both in one player, always an option there. So we'll see. Let us know what you think in the comments below as well. Here's what I want to ask for. Give me your bold prediction for this season. Tell us which of our predictions you hate the most, and tell us why it's Dave Roberts to win Manager of the Year is the prediction that you hate the most. But answer the questions. I'd love to get some feedback from you all as well. A couple notes upcoming this season. We wanted to let you know playback is going to be a piece of what we do. Getplayback.com/DodgerBlue1958, I believe, is the URL. You can check that in the description below. It will be there. We're going to be doing that consistently. That's a watch party. It's a ton of fun. All you have to do is log in with however you watch Dodger games. If you can watch them on TV, then you can watch them on playback. It creates a room where we are all watching the exact same feed at the exact same time, and we can interact. People like myself will be on stage. Daniel will join us from time to time. Scott, Matt, Blake, all sorts of folks will be hopping in there. It's kind of like a live watch party with your friends, like as if we were all sitting in the same room chatting about the game. You'll get to hear that. So keep an eye out on that. I believe we are planning to do that both on opening day and on Friday night. Both of those are night games. We're also going to be doing live post-game shows every Tuesday night and every Friday night. So make sure you subscribe to the Dodger Blue 1958 YouTube page. Ring the notification bell. We'll be doing live post-game shows, not at 10:30 p.m., but it sounds like maybe 9:45 p.m. this year, which is an upgrade. And then, of course, every Sunday night, we're going to be doing live podcasts. Me and Matt will be doing that at 9 p.m. on Sunday nights. And then we'll have tons of content throughout the week. Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube as well. We'll have short videos, kind of little news stuff that comes up. So make sure you're subscribed, you're following us in all those places. Follow Daniel on Twitter, follow myself. We'd greatly appreciate it. So with that said, just a few days away from opening day. Get excited about that. We appreciate you joining us, whether it's via YouTube or whether it's via the Blue Wire podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining us. That's Daniel. I'm Jeff. Enjoy the rest of your day. And as always, go Dodgers.